The Galactic Military Academy's main combat hall buzzed with nervous energy. Rows of sleek seats held cadets from across the known systems, their various appendages, tentacles, and crystalline formations glimmering under the artificial lighting. At the very back corner, almost hidden behind a support beam, sat Maya Chen. Maya, just Maya. No fancy titles, no royal bloodlines, no genetic enhancements. Just a human girl from Terra, the infamous Deathworld that most civilized species whisper about in hushed tones. Today we will demonstrate proper combat techniques against a Class 7 threat, announced Instructor Zextera, his forearms gesturing dramatically. The towering Vortanian stood nearly 3 meters tall, his purple exoskeleton gleaming with military decorations. As you know, proper form and technique are essential when facing dangerous opponents. A ripple of agreement passed through the assembled cadets. Well, most of them agreed. Maya just rolled her eyes. The instructor's compound eyes swept across the crowd. Now, who would like to volunteer for a demonstration? Hands, claws, and various limbs shot up immediately. Everyone wanted to impress Instructor Zextera. Everyone except the small human in the back. Ah, yes, Cadet Velnari, please come forward. A graceful Etherian floated down from the middle section, her translucent body shimmering with confidence. Maya watched as Velnari took her position on the training mat. The Etherian was everything Maya wasn't. Tall, elegant, from one of the core world's most prestigious families. Her combat style was like a dance, all flowing movements and calculated strikes. Zextera assumed a basic defensive stance. Begin when ready, cadet. The match lasted exactly 43 seconds. Velnari moved like liquid light, her attacks precise and textbook perfect. But Zextera countered every move with ease, eventually securing a hold that would have incapacitated most opponents. Excellent technique, the instructor announced as Velnari gracefully acknowledged defeat. However, you relied too heavily on formal combat patterns. Real threats don't follow academy protocols. Velnari nodded respectfully and returned her seat to a chorus of impressed murmurs from her fellow cadets. Next volunteer? More hands went up. Maya continued staring out the window at the academy's training grounds, where she could see other classes running through their exercises. This time, Cadet Thorax stepped forward. The Kronar was built like a living tank, all muscle and bone ridges. His species were natural warriors, bred for combat across generations. The match lasted longer, nearly 2 minutes of heavy grappling and powerful strikes. But the result was the same. Zextera's superior experience and technique won out. Better, the instructor commented. Raw strength has its place, but without proper application, it becomes a liability. And so it went. Cadet after cadet stepped forward, each one eager to prove themselves against a legendary instructor. Some lasted seconds. Others managed a full minute or two. None came close to actually challenging Zextera. After the 7th demonstration, the instructor paused. His multiple eyes scanned the crowd again. Interesting, he said slowly. I notice we have a representative from Terra in our class. Maya felt every eye in the room turn toward her. Great, just great. Cadet Chun, isn't it? From a famous Deathworld. She didn't move. Didn't even look up from her contemplation of the window. The combat records from your homeworld are quite fascinating, Zextera continued, his voice carrying that particular tone instructors used when they were about to make an example of someone. Constant warfare, brutal conditions, evolution through violence. Tell me, have these stories been exaggerated? Maya finally turned her head. Her dark eyes met the instructor's compound gaze without flinching. Which stories? She asked quietly. A few cadets chuckled. The human's voice was soft, almost bored. Hardly the intimidating presence one might expect from a Deathworlder. Oh, the usual tales. Humans surviving impossible odds, defeating technologically superior opponents through sheer brutality. Surely these accounts have been embellished over time. Maya shrugged. Probably. More chuckles from the crowd. Even Velnari smiled at the human's apparent modesty. Well then, Zextera said, his mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. Perhaps you'd like to demonstrate some of these legendary human combat techniques? For educational purposes, of course. The suggestion hung in the air. Maya could feel the expectation radiating from her classmates. They wanted to see the Deathworlder in action, wanted to see if the stories were true. She could also feel their skepticism. Looking at her, they saw a small, unremarkable human. No obvious weapons, no impressive physical build, no intimidating presence. Just a girl who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. "I'm good, thanks," Maya said, turning back to window. The dismissal was so casual, so completely indifferent, that it took a moment for the implications to sink in. She had just refused a direct invitation from the instructor in front of the entire class. Zextaraz's posture shifted slightly. His decorations caught the light as his chest expanded. "I wasn't making a request, Cadet Chun." Maya sighed. She actually sighed, as if this whole situation was an inconvenience to her afternoon. "Look, instructor, I'm sure you're very good at what you do. Your technique is solid. Your form is textbook perfect. But I didn't come here to show off for a bunch of core world kids who think combat is some kind of elegant art form." The silence that followed was deafening. Several cadets made small sound of shock. Velnari's shimmering form actually flickered with surprise. Zextaraz's arms crossed over his chest. "Is that so? And what exactly did you come here for?" Maya finally stood up. She was small, barely reaching the chest height of most of her classmates. But something in her posture, in the way she moved, made the space around her seem suddenly larger. "I came here to learn about galactic military protocols and alien combat techniques, not to validate whatever preconceptions you have about my species." She started walking toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the silent hall. "However," Zextaraz called after her, "since you seem so confident in your assessment of my abilities, perhaps you'd care to put your money where your mouth is, as humans say?" Maya stopped. For the first time since class began, she looked genuinely interested. "What did you have in mind?" "A simple demonstration. You versus me. If you can land a single significant strike within 30 seconds, I'll excuse you from all future combat demonstrations." Maya turned around slowly. A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "And if I can't, then you'll participate in every demonstration for the rest of the semester." With enthusiasm. The other cadets leaned forward. This was unprecedented. Instructors didn't make bets with students, especially not with Deathworld humans who just insulted their teaching methods. Maya walked back toward the combat area. Her movements were different now, less casual. There was something predatory in the way she stepped, something that made several cadets unconsciously shift in their seats. 30 seconds, she asked. 30 seconds. One significant strike. One significant strike. Maya nodded and stepped onto the training mat. The surface was designed to cushion falls and absorb impacts from various alien physiologies. It had never hosted a human before. "Just to be clear," Maya said as she took a position opposite the instructor, "when you say significant strike, you mean something that would incapacitate or seriously injure an opponent in real combat?" Zextaraz's mandibles clicked again. "I mean something more impressive than the light taps we've seen so far today." "Yes." "Cool." Maya's stance was all wrong. At least, it looked wrong to everyone watching. She didn't adopt any of the formal positions they'd learned in their combat classes. Instead, she just stood there relaxed, hands at her sides. "Begin when ready," Zextaraz announced. Maya didn't move. The instructor circled her slowly, his forearms spread wide, ready to counter any attack. His compound eyes tracked every micro-movement of her body. 15 seconds passed. Maya continued standing in her relaxed pose, apparently unconcerned by the instructor's positioning. "Any time now, cadet," Zextaraz said. He was starting to look a bit foolish, stalking around someone who wasn't even trying to fight. 20 seconds. Some of the cadets began whispering among themselves. Was the human frozen with fear? Had she realized she was outmatched? 25 seconds. Zextaraz decided to end the embarrassment. He lunged forward with a perfectly executed grappling technique designed to pin an opponent without causing injury. Maya moved. What happened next would be replayed in academy training vids for decades to come. Maya's right hand shot out and grabbed Zextaraz's leading arm. She pivoted on her left foot, using the instructor's own momentum against him. Her left elbow came up in a sharp arc that connected with a joint in his exoskeleton. The crack was audible throughout the hall. Zextara's bellow of pain and surprise echoed off the walls as he crashed to the mat. His left arm hung at an unnatural angle, the joint completely dislocated. Total elapsed time, 9 seconds. Maya stood over the instructor's prone form, her expression unchanged. Was that significant enough? She asked. The hall erupted. Some cadets jumped to their feet. Others sat frozen in shock. Medical drones were already descending from the ceiling to attend to Zextara. Through gritted mandibles, the instructor managed to speak. How? Maya shrugged. That same casual gesture she'd been using all class. You telegraph your attacks. Your stance prioritizes defense over mobility. And you've never fought anyone who wasn't trained in formal combat techniques. She turned to address the stunned class. See, here's the thing about Deathworlders. We don't learn to fight in academies. We learn to fight by surviving. Every day, from the moment we can walk. Our combat is an art form or a sport. It's just another way to not die. One of the medical drones was injecting Zextara with pain medication. Another was working to reset his dislocated joint. The stories about humans aren't exaggerated, Maya continued, her voice carrying clearly across the silent hall. If anything, they're incomplete. We don't just survive impossible odds. We thrive in them. She looked down at the instructor one more time. Thanks for the lesson, though. I learned something important today. What's that? Zextara managed to ask through his medicated haze. Maya's smile was sharp as broken glass. That the galaxy really isn't ready for what's coming. She walked toward the exit again, leaving behind a hall full of cadets who were seeing their first real glimpse of what it meant to be human. 3 weeks later, Maya's life at the academy had become significantly more complicated. News of the Second Takedown had spread through the military academy like wildfire. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know about the small human who had hospitalized one of their most respected instructors. Some approached with curiosity, others with challenges, and a few with something that looked suspiciously like fear. Maya preferred the fear. It meant fewer interruptions during meal times. She was sitting alone in the cafeteria, picking at something the food synthesizers insisted was Terran-compatible protein, when Cadet Velnari approached her table. Mind if I sit? The Etherian asked, her translucent form shimmering with nervous energy. Maya gestured to the empty chairs around her table. Pick one. Velnari settled into the seat across from her, her movements as graceful as ever. I wanted to thank you. For what? For showing us what real combat looks like. Maya snorted. That wasn't real combat. Real combat doesn't have rules or time limits. Real combat doesn't stop when someone gets hurt. Then what would you call it? A demonstration, like the instructor wanted. Velnari leaned forward slightly. The medical team said you could have killed him. That strike could have shattered his exoskeleton completely if you'd hit it at a different angle. Maya continued eating her questionable protein. Yep, but you didn't. Nope. Why? Maya finally looked up from her meal. Because killing instructors is generally frowned upon in academic settings. Bad for graduation prospects. The Etherian's laugh sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. You have a strange sense of humor for someone from a death world. You have strange ideas about Deathworlders for someone who's never met one before. Velnari nodded thoughtfully. That's true. Most of what I know comes from news reports and military briefings. They make humans sound like unstoppable killing machines. We are, Maya said matter-of-factly, we're also inventors, artists, philosophers, and really good at making terrible jokes. Being good at violence doesn't mean it's all we are. Before Velnari could respond, a shadow fell across their table. Maya looked up to see Cadet Korak standing behind her, his bulk blocking out the overhead lighting. The Helterian was built like a mobile fortress, all scales and muscle, and barely contained aggression. Human, he rumbled, his voice like grinding stones. Helterian, Maya replied without looking impressed. I challenge you to combat. Maya sighed. Of course you do. This had been happening almost daily since the incident with Zextera. Cadets from warrior species who felt their honor had been somehow diminished by a human showing superior combat skills. Maya had declined every challenge so far. The terms are simple, Corex continued. Single combat, no weapons, victory by submission or incapacitation. And what do I get when I win? Maya asked. Corex's laugh was like an avalanche. When you win, human arrogance knows no bounds. Human confidence, Maya corrected. There's a difference. Accept my challenge or be branded a coward. Maya stood up slowly. Even standing on her chair, she barely reached Corex's shoulder level. Let me explain something to you, Rocky, where I come from. Being called a coward by someone who challenges lone opponents to public fights would be considered a compliment. It means I'm smart enough not to waste time on meaningless displays of ego. Corex's scales rattled with anger. You defeated an injured instructor through trickery. Face a true warrior and show your real skill. Injured instructor? Maya's voice dropped to something dangerous. Zextera wasn't injured when I put him down. He got injured because I put him down. She hopped down from her chair and walked around the table until she was standing directly in front of the towering Helterian. And if you call that trickery one more time, I'll show you exactly how many tricks this Deathworlder knows. The cafeteria had gone quiet. Other cadets were watching the confrontation with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Corex leaned down until his massive head was level with Maya's. Threats human. Observations. For a long moment, they stared at each other. The Helterian's eyes were like molten copper, burning with challenge and bloodlust. Maya's were dark, calm, and utterly unimpressed. Tomorrow, Corex finally growled. Training Hall 7. Noon. He turned and stomped away, leaving behind the scent of sulfur and ozone. Maya sat back down and returned to her meal as if nothing had happened. Are you actually going to fight him? Velnari asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Probably. Why? You just said challenges like that are meaningless. Maya's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Because now it's not about his ego. It's about mine. The next day, Training Hall 7 was packed beyond capacity. Word spread through the entire academy about the impending match between the human Deathworlder and the Helterian warrior caste cadet. Maya arrived exactly at noon, wearing standard academy training gear. She looked small and fragile compared to Corex, who had donned ceremonial combat harness that made him look even more imposing than usual. Rules are simple, announced Cadet Thorne, a Centaurian who had volunteered to referee. Combat continues until one opponent submits or is rendered incapable of continuing. No weapons, no permanent injuries. Maya and Corex faced each other across the training mat. The size difference was almost comical. He outweighed her by at least 200 kilograms and stood nearly twice her height. Any words before we begin? Thorne asked. Corex spoke first. I dedicate this victory to the honor of all warrior peoples who refuse to be diminished by Deathworld trickery. The crowd murmured approval. Maya just nodded politely. Anything to add, Cadet Chen? Maya looked around at the assembled crowd, then up at her opponent. Yeah, this is going to hurt. For you? Certainly, Corex rumbled. Maya's grin was predatory. I wasn't talking to me. Begin! Corex charged immediately, his massive form moving with surprising speed. His strategy was obvious. Close distance quickly, use his size and strength advantage to overpower the smaller opponent before she could employ any evasive techniques. It was a good strategy. It would have worked against most opponents. Maya wasn't most opponents. She moved like liquid mercury, flowing around Corex's charge so smoothly it looked choreographed. As he passed, she lashed out with her left foot, striking the back of his knee at precisely the right angle to hyperextend the joint. Corex stumbled but didn't fall. He spun around faster than something his size should have been able to move, swinging a massive fist toward where Maya had been standing. She was no longer there. What followed was less a fight than a masterclass in tactical dismantlement. Maya didn't try to match Corex's strength or absorb his attacks. Instead, she turned his own momentum against him, used his size as a liability, and targeted every weak point in his anatomy with surgical precision. Every time he swung, she wasn't there. Every time he tried to grapple, she slipped away. And with every misattack, she landed another strike on joints, nerve clusters, and pressure points that most galactic species didn't even know they had. Stop running and fight. Corax bellowed after a particularly frustrating exchange left him swinging at empty air. I am fighting, Maya replied, her breathing still perfectly controlled. You're just not very good at it. That did it. Corax's tactical thinking evaporated in a red haze of fury. He abandoned all technique and simply tried to crush his opponent through brute force. Maya let him overextend on a wild haymaker, then stepped inside his guard. Her right hand shot up in a palm strike that connected with the soft tissue under his chin, snapping his head back. Before he could recover, she grabbed his extended arm and used a technique that looked deceptively simple. Corax's bellow of pain shook the walls as his shoulders separated. Maya held the joint lock just long enough to make sure he felt it, then released him and stepped back. The Helterian dropped to one knee, cradling his injured arm. Yield, Maya said quietly. Corax looked up at her with something between pain and disbelief. How? Physics, Maya replied. Leverage. And about 15 years of being trained by people who want to make sure I could survive anything the universe threw at me. She extended her hand to help him up. After a moment's hesitation, Corax accepted the assistance. The stories about humans, he said through gritted teeth as the medical drones arrived, they don't do you justice. Like I said before, they're incomplete. As the medical team tended to Corax's shoulder, Maya addressed the stunned crowd. Anyone else feeling like their honor has been diminished? The silence was deafening. Good, because I've got studying to do, and these demonstrations are cutting into my research time. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and just so we're all clear about something, what you've seen over the past few weeks, this isn't me being impressive. This is me holding back. A lot. Maya's dark eyes swept across the assembled cadets, most of whom were staring at her with newfound respect and no small amount of fear. See, the thing about being from a death world isn't just that we're good at violence. It's that we understand what real violence looks like. And what you've witnessed here, this is just playing around. She smiled, and every cadet in the room felt a chill run down their spine. The galaxy has no idea what humans are really capable of, but you're all going to find out soon enough. Maya walked out of the training hall, leaving behind a group of future galactic military officers who were beginning to understand that everything they thought they knew about warfare was about to change forever. And in the back of their minds, a single terrifying thought began to take root. If this was Maya holding back, what would happen when humans stopped playing nice?